treasuries with instant dollars that we're printing right now, and you take them.
Yes.
And the problem is that's not going to happen.
Right.
They've already told everybody that they're going to refuse.
Right.
This is going to be the thing that the new administration faces on the 26th.
Do you think they're ready for it?
Doesn't matter. I think they've failed already because their goal is not to accommodate reality and get on with things. Their goal is to prop up the old existing system, which is based on $1, which in 1913 had 100 cents worth of debt to be able to be attached to it, but currently has something less than 4 cents worth of debt that can be attached to it. So it is worth less in the actual linguistic and material sense of the word, and no one wants them. So as long as they're attempting to prop up the old system, no, I don't think any of the things that they will do will work. They can't do a new deal.
Yeah.
They don't have anything to pay for it. In the 30s, we had all the slop, if you will, of the debt that could be attached to the dollar because we were a manufacturing nation.
Right.
In the current state of affairs, we are not.
Yeah, we're not at all.
The past 15 years, all we've manufactured internationally has been debt instruments.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. All right, well, here's something that a lot of people are emailing about. A lot of people are focusing and watching and keeping their eyes on is the earthquake swarms, of course, in Yellowstone. We briefly talked about that, which is very, very interesting. I put up a chart before on the vidcast system that it was from the USGS. It actually showed the high level, like 3 to 4 point earthquakes, ones that can cause significant damage that have been tracked over the past, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years. Around 2001, the level of these things just skyrocketed. When you look at the chart, it's staggering whenever you look at it, and it doesn't seem to be going down any. So let's take Yellowstone for example. I mean, I've been kind of keeping my eye on this. I mean, this has been going on for a little while. I mean, we had the earthquake swarms, but those levels have been rising and falling. And the folks out there, the USGS, has just been saying, we'll just keep an eye on it. You know, I talked with Jim Berkland.
Yeah, well, what else can they say? What can they do about it, right?
Right. And so Jim Berkland has even said, you know, he thinks that something's about ready to pop. We have that, and we have the the Ring of Fire out there. It's just been incredibly crazy active. What do you got for us about as far as that's concerned?
Well, there's the whole thing. You say the Ring of Fire out there. Well, the Ring of Fire is only a few hundred miles away from where I am.
True.
And in fact, when the Nisqually quake hit, what everybody thinks of as the Seattle quake around here, it was only 9 miles away at the epicenter. Yeah. So we're right there at that edge. Our data shows that we're going to match a historical trend towards destructive earthquakes that participate in driving linguistics towards diaspora. And that word indicates the scattering of peoples. This is an archetype that arose independently of our linguistic modeling. We had to root around for the word to actually describe all these clusterings that were coming. But the indications are that this global coastal event that we suspect will be a 5-month process, not really an event, not a single day or a single earthquake or anything, is part and parcel of things that are occurring right now. So it's predictable that we will all be facing increased earthquakes at a damaging level to the point where they become disruptive to daily life, and it'll probably take about 18 months or so for that to become an increasing part of reality, to the extent that the language filters in the way that we're seeing it now. We have this related within our Terra entity to this global coastal event, which may actually have begun already, because there's a current trend, if you will, that's been accelerating these last 4 or 5 months, and I get reports from all over the planet on this, of these strange waves. And they're not tsunamis, and they're not tidal waves, although they are associated with tidal activity. And recently the Mediterranean's been hit by them. They've been hit us in Maine. We've seen islands in the Pacific hit by them, islands in the Indian Ocean. Africa's gotten them. And for instance, the effect would be that in a local region, not really that large, you might get a sudden increase of meters worth of waves to the point where they threaten existing structures. So on the coast of France, for instance, a long-standing restaurant that had a 150-year history of being there was washed away in a matter of a day by freak waves, and that's the term that's applied to them, but they're not freak anymore because they're becoming more and more common.
Yes.
And I think that is also related to these earthquake swarms. The causal agent I'm not prepared to speculate on, but their appearance in both frequency and so on, while it doesn't track the earthquakes, it does so, but it lags by a number of years. The 2001 thing, by the way, the shift in damaging earthquakes, coincides with the stabilization of the sun after it had done its magnetic pole flip.
Yeah, that would be very bad. And plus, we also seen, you know, of course, with the earthquakes, you know, the tsunamis are usually right in line, especially if it happens around coastal areas. It seems as if, though, we also have a map up on the website that shows the most dangerous areas to live as far as being killed by natural disasters, and the low-lying areas and coastal areas are the highest. I mean, they're in the reds because of various reasons, usually hurricanes and things, which obviously hurricanes are also getting extremely, even higher and bigger and more dangerous. Like, look at Ike. I mean, it completely wiped out Galveston here in Texas.
Right. We've also had the functional equivalent of hurricanes, although not quite to the same level, here in the Pacific Northwest in the past number of years that didn't exist prior to that. And I have personal evidence that I've lost the number of buildings to trees being pushed over, etc., by high winds. In fact, we've lost half of our trees to high winds in the last 8 years.
Jeez. So aren't you supposed to avoid the coastal areas, Clif?
Yeah, that's the issue. I'm not actually on the coast. I'm actually on Puget Sound, which the sound is inland, and it's sort of weasel words, but because the tsunami could indeed truck on down the sound if it wanted.
Right.
But I'm trapped here by family obligations, and I happen to like the area. The universe put me here, and this is where I am. So, yes, I don't follow my own advice that way, but it may be the universe is going to move me soon anyway, along with everyone else.
Right. You know, I was looking at some of the data about the Canary Islands. The Canary Islands, when it had its earthquake several years ago, it cracked that entire island in half, which a lot of people kind of keep an eye on that and saying, you know, if it were to get hit by another large significant earthquake and that side collapsed, I mean, New York, the whole east side of the United States, they could be looking at, 20-mile high tsunami, even if as far out as the Canary Islands are.
Well, there's actually a physical limit to how big tsunamis can be. There's a difference between a giant wave and a tsunami. Tsunamis probably practically cannot rise over 120 feet, and they're based on the slope of the continental shelf and the slope of the benthic regions that lead up to the land areas. So you could get a very large wave, but it's not quite the same as a tsunami, and a wave dissipates very easily. The tsunami, what makes them so deadly is that when they hit, they may be 5 or 6 feet high, not much more than that, but they're 400 miles long or deep relative to you, and they just keep coming.
Right.
Whereas these large waves, they wash over everything and dissipate without the destructive force of the tsunami. Nonetheless, your point is taken, but we need to apply other words there. I do not believe it is an if situation. I actually think that for whatever causal reason, whether it's the alignment with the galactic center and the increase in the radiation, magnetic light, or whatever, we've had peculiarities of the sun appear. We've had the heliosphere around the whole planetary system grow and shrink very rapidly and change. We've had the lack of sunspots and so on. So there's throughout our whole solar system, things are changing rapidly. This seems to coincide historically with descriptions that are several thousands of years old of previous times where earthquakes dominated. To the point where whole populations were forced to move. We also see those same archetypes re-arising within our data for over the next 2 to 3 years, beginning actually in 2009 with what we're calling this global coastal event, although event probably isn't the best word to use for that, but we're kind of stuck with it at this point.
Until the data...
It appears to be about a 5 or 6 month process, and it might be, for instance, that for whatever reason, we got a tide effect over 5 months. So we could speculate that, well, one easy way to look at it would be maybe a Greenland glacier or something would slowly shift into the planetary waters and raise overall water level, say, 3 or 4 or 5 feet. Doesn't sound like much, but it means that the storm surge now might go in 200 miles in the Chesapeake where it didn't before. And up here in the Pacific Northwest, my distance from the water might suddenly shrink from 135 feet to, say, 80 feet, based on high tide and surging conditions in storms. So it would force a lot of people to move. And that's the word we're seeing, which is the diaspora, which is related to Earth events, Earth alterations. Now, another one could be, too, that if the planetary expansion model is accurate, we might see that the planet is actually expanding,
yes,
getting larger. If that were the case, we could still have a global coastal event, but it would be the other way. All of a sudden, the tide would retreat and not come back. And maybe Puget Sound would lose most of its water, and I would suddenly be 300 feet above the lower water level, that kind of a thing.
Right.
But that would also cause the population to move, because all of a sudden, all global shipping would be interrupted, and we'd have to reestablish ports and all of this.
Yes. Yeah. Well, does something like that happen on an immediate process? I mean, like over a period of 4 or 5 days, or 4 or 5 months?
Well, the speculation in the past, and that's what we have to go on, we have to assume to a certain extent that past behavior is an indicator of future performance in these kind of things. We've seen large glacial masses that have been able to shift themselves in a matter of weeks, and most of the activity